now escaped her. She will no longer worry about seeing that I eat too many fats. She will no longer worry about my indulgence in alcohol or my enterprise and walking around too much. Ladies and gentlemen, the finance minister has been bold in his budget. Has he been bold enough? I know not. Could he have been bolder? I know not. I do know that he has imposed a very high impost on petroleum products. I also know that his colleague, the Minister for Railways, has made our traveling, our transportation, and the movement of our raw materials a very expensive item. What it will do to us individually and collectively, I know not. But we have Mr. Palkhiwala here who will enlighten us. Immediately after the budget, many men have given superficial and off-the-cuff points of view on the budget. Today, we have a man here who has studied the profession, who's to enlighten us on what the budget is going to do for us. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Palkhiwala.
Field Marshal Manekshaw, Mr. Vijay Merchant, Mr. M.R. Pai, ladies and gentlemen, I'm most grateful to the Field Marshal and to my good friend Vijay for their very kind words about me. I have spoken a few times in the past on the budget, but this year's talk is going to be a novel experience for me. There is little to criticize and less to denounce in the budget. If such a thing happened in the United States, a suit for very heavy damages could be filed against the government for doing something so thoughtlessly, a suit for about $100 million in damages for depriving a man of his occupation. In language of studied moderation, I would say that this year's budget is the finest budget of the last 3 decades. It is an epoch-making budget for redesigning India. When the history of this year comes to be written, I think Indian budget of 85 will be regarded as the biggest economic story of Asia. And it's appropriate that such a thing has happened in the year which is the 125th anniversary, as Mr. Pai pointed out in his letter to the press, 125th anniversary of the Indian budget. The first Indian budget having been introduced by one Mr. Wilson in the year 1860. And it's the 100th anniversary of the Congress Party itself. There are two types of people who frame budgets. There are the thinkerists and the structuralists. The tinkerist is the man who wants to just tinker with the budget, add 1% here or deduct 2% there. The structuralist tries to see to what extent the structure of the tax system needs to be changed. And this year, it has been a structuralist who has framed the budget. It required a lot of courage. The Field Marshal rightly pointed out that many people expected the budget to be bold. I'm not denying it could have been bolder, because there is no limit to my own greed. But I can say that it is a very courageous budget. Economic and political values in this country have got so debased that to do the wrong thing requires no courage, but to do the right thing requires a lot of courage in this country. And the right thing has been done. I think this budget matches the mood of the people. The mood is one of self-confidence, forward-looking, vision, and optimism. And it is this mood which is, to my mind, totally matched by the budget. Let me give you the background to the budget before I come to telling you what are its qualities and values. The background is this. We are living in perhaps the most momentous era in the history of the human race. Never before has the human race lived through times comparable to today's. Very few of us realize what we are living through. In 1945, just 40 years ago, there was a certain fund of scientific knowledge. In 40 years, that fund of scientific knowledge has multiplied 9 times. In other words, today, the fund of knowledge is 900% what it was just 40 years ago. And knowledge doubles itself every 8 years. In other words, in 1977, the level of knowledge was at a certain point, and now it's double of what it was. Of course, in Indian universities, physics and chemistry textbooks were those written 20 years ago. But the fact remains that if you wanted to be updated with the progress of technology in the world, the progress of scientific research, it's just mind-boggling. And the benefit will go to those countries which have the mechanism to absorb this advancement. Now look at the economic situation around us. In 1950, South Korea, Thailand, and India had the same per capita income. Today, the per capita income of India is $270 per annum. I'm taking American dollars for the sake of facility of comparison. $270 is the per capita income in India. In Thailand now, it is $800. In South Korea, $1,800. We started, I repeat, with the same per capita income 35 years ago. Take China. It produced in 1984 400 million tons of food grains. India's record production last year, it was a record, was 153 million tons. Compare 400 with 153 million. This is to put ourselves in the right, for the right position in which we can decide relatively how far we have progressed. And China has only 100 million hectares of cultivable land. India has 166 million hectares. Yet there the production is 400 million tons, here 153. We have the largest acreage in 4 crops, in flaxseed, rapeseed, groundnut in shells, and cotton seed. Our acreage is the largest in the whole world. But our yield per acre is the lowest in the world. It is something worth knowing. You see the extent to which we will have to progress before we can catch up with the rest of the world. And the most telling example of that is that of Hong Kong. And this example, the facts I'm giving you now, were stated by the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the British House of Commons a few months ago. Hong Kong has less than 1% of India's population. Its population is only 0.3% of India's population. 4.5 million, ours is 755 million. 0.3% of India's population. Its land area, of course, is ridiculously small because it's only a city. Its land area is 0.03% of India's land area. That is 3 upon 10,000. And yet, Hong Kong's trade is double the trade of India with the outside world. Mark the figures, double the trade of India. Doesn't it make you think, is there something wrong with the way we have been governing this country for so many years? And yet, the economists, the sheltered economists in colleges who have never known how wealth is created will keep on talking about their social philosophy, little realizing how the wealth of a nation is created. Frederick the Great used to say that if he ever wanted to punish a province, he would put a philosopher in charge of that province. We have had too many social philosophers who have brought the country to the position in which it is today. I will not deal with the more facts and figures because your time is so limited. Now, against this international comparison, what is the situation here today? To my mind, the most difficult job in this country is to absorb the unemployed. The unemployed whose income is nil because they have either no job or they are able to work only part-time.